Good day everyone, and welcome to the first in a brand new series here on Charede Gaming, my review series, which hopefully will be informative as well as a little bit entertaining. Today, to get us started, we're going to be taking a look at Beans the Coffee Shop Simulator by Whitethorn Digital and published by Whitethorn Digital LLC. It is available on PC, Mac, and it is a casual indie simulation clicker management game set in a coffee shop. Like me, you may have watched the TV show Friends and thought, hey, look, I can do that. Coffee shop, a breeze, right? Well, this might prove you wrong, might prove you right. We'll see. But Beans is a story-driven experience, and it puts you in the role of the coffee shop owner, Ruby. Because it's story-driven, I'm going to try and avoid spoiling too much of the story, but Ruby basically finds out she is the owner of the Coffee Bottom estate, whose owner mysteriously dies. And then she finds out she's the heiress. However, in order to successfully inherit, with the aid of the estate's butler, she needs to prove herself. To do so, she's got to run some of the coffee shops in the franchise and complete certain objectives along the way. However, there is a mysterious individual who is stalking her on her journey, and with their team, intends to sabotage Ruby. This game has a very classic looking pixel style, which has quite a bit of charm. It isn't my personal favourite art direction, even though I am a avid player of the games like Minecraft, but the sprites are very carefully designed, and it is really, really clear what you are looking at all times. There's really good diversity in the sprites, and if you look at the number of appliances and recipes available, there is a big, big range, again, all very, very clearly identifiable. Outside of the visuals, the audio complements the visuals very, very well. There are some really, really nice, catchy little tunes, which I found myself humming along to at various times. The songs aren't intrusive or particularly domineering on the experience, which makes it a really nice, gentle background soundtrack. I didn't notice too many reloops of the same song either, so that stopped me from getting bored with the audio. Together, the visuals and the audio marry together very, very well and really, really does improve what the game offers. It makes it very, very relaxing for the majority of the time, but it does provide the odd frantic moment. One thing that did really, really disappoint me was the lack of options in the settings menu. The options are a bit limited to the point of frustrating at times, but generally speaking, wasn't a huge inconvenience either. The options for audio are limited to music and FX sliders, and visually, although there isn't really a need for things like advanced lighting, etc., I would have expected a bare minimum of a resolution select, being able to select between windowed and full screen modes, being able to select which screen I'm using, and then also the option to change the gamma and the brightness without having to resort to doing it on the screens myself. Also, one thing of note for streamers and YouTubers, especially those who are using XSplit, this game doesn't get picked up by the game auto detect or the specific game source setting. Therefore, if you're going to record it, you're going to need to do a manual screen cap instead. Slight inconvenience, but just something of note for those that intend to do it for that particular reason. Another gripe for me, although again very, very minor, was the lack of key mapping or control display. For me, this wasn't an issue, but for example, for someone very new to gaming, or for someone who's maybe come back to the game after having not played it for a long time and doesn't really want to go through that first level again, having just a little panel that showed the controls rather than going into that level would have been nice. All in all, the controls are fairly standard, and the player predominantly relies on the mouse as well as keys like Shift and R for specific tasks. The controls are generally very, very responsive, and I experienced no issue during my 5 hours of playing as far as controls not behaving as intended. In terms of game mechanics, I really, really enjoyed the recipe system. I found there was a certain degree of guesswork involved with them, but if you are really, really stuck, especially with those recipes that are like 3 or 4 items, you can use the butler in-game via the research menu, and for $35 a pop, instead of the standard $5 when you guess, he will actually give you the recipe straight up. So for those that are struggling or just can't be bothered, you know, it gives you a good option. If, like myself, who want a bit more challenge, you could challenge yourself not to use the butler at all and see how far you can get. Most of the recipes, especially the common sense basic ones, are basically coffee shop humour. So generally lots of little puns, that kind of thing. And I have to say, it did give me a few good chuckles, some of them. As I said before, at the end of the day, it's your choice whether you use the butler or not. But it's good, the options there. I did find a bug with the research menu that plagued me for the entirety of the mall level, and it was incredibly frustrating because it glitched out several of the research item images and I couldn't move them, and it therefore inhibited the use of the menu entirely, which is a bit of a problem when you've only got 2 save slots, one of which is used for autosave, and there's no manual level restart, which again is a feature I would really, really appreciate if they put in. For the most part, the game is very, very chill. I sat there most of the time accruing money and just occasionally tweaking my shop with various items. This isn't a hardcore finance-orientated game. If that's what you're looking for, this really isn't going to be the fit for that. But if you do want something more relaxed and something in particular story-driven, then this will potentially be the game for you. I would prefer it if the game did add a finance panel so I could see daily progress as well as income and expenses, so that I could be a little more focused on trying to balance things out. And I would also like to see a more tycoon orientated mode as well, where you can set up like multiple coffee shops on a map and go in and out of them to manage them directly and expand your empire. I know this wasn't the original intent of the game, but it certainly would add a lot of replayability, which, if I'm honest, was what I was expecting the game to be in the first place. I did read the game's description when I was looking it up, and it did mention a story, but I really wasn't expecting it to be the focal point that it actually is. The story itself is really, really good. Well thought out, great characters, a really cool situation, and it's all very, very beautifully put together. It does leave you rather limited, though, once you've completed the story. It takes about 5 hours thereabouts to play the whole story mode, and you could replay the levels. It even gives you the options to continue a level without actually hitting the complete button that moves you on to the next bit of the story. But I really do feel this game would lend itself well to kind of the inherited business empire situation, whereby a player could start with multiple shops which potentially have some sort of issues that add some sort of challenge, or starting a fresh empire with just a little bit of money in your pocket and then battling it against rival brands. If that's not something that the developer would look to include in this game, perhaps maybe a sequel or a spin-off would be nice. I can really, really see how this would fit in with that. The levels themselves are very diverse and well thought out, and they lend themselves strongly to the story through the use of the antagonists and the situations, as well as a variety of mechanics that the player must compete against to win each level. Overall, the game lacks challenge, and this was one of the things that annoyed me the most. But again, I understand this probably isn't really directed at me, this particular style of game. I was often left with the situation where, after researching a few recipes, putting some basic decor and seeding down, I could actually kind of AFK for a little bit. It's great for a little bit of mindless playing and chilling, but it wasn't challenging me in any way whatsoever. There was only 2 situations where I really felt I had to be a little more attentive, and that was the level with the rubbish being dumped constantly, and then the surveillance in the mall level, where you had to be a little bit more proactive. I really enjoyed those mechanics, because it gave me something a bit more to do instead of faffing around in the recipe menu, taking cash off the tables. So I found it more interesting and a bit more hands-on, which kept me a bit more interested. I was expecting that each level would add a mechanic that would then slightly increase the challenge and build on the next one. This isn't the case. The specific challenge element from each level is restricted to that level, nor will you come across it again in the end level. So, for example, with the trash, my expectation was that was going to get carried over to the next level all the way through, and then I'd have to deal with the introduction of the additional issues as I was learning and progressing as a coffee shop owner. That didn't happen. It was literally just that level, and that was it. The next level then had its own thing, and the trash thing didn't follow through at all. This can be quite good because it doesn't overwhelm the player, but at the same time, I kind of felt like it would have been nice to have, even if it was maybe toned down a little bit in the next level, so it wasn't the main focal point. It would have just given me something a little bit more to deal with or to do, which would have helped. Especially when it comes to the build-up towards the end of the story. The story was really interesting, but I didn't feel I was particularly doing much. The ending is very, very good. It's very, very heavily scripted. But again, if that tiniest little bit of extra difficulty or roundup, or maybe the coming together of all those situations, particular challenge, brought into the last level, that would have made it feel like I'd achieved something a bit more. The last level plays out very scripted, regardless of performance. There doesn't seem to be any risk of losing whatsoever. In summary, Beans the Coffee Shop Simulator is a really, really good casual simulation game. It really, really excels in charm that's delivered through the storytelling and the characters. It features solid core systems and mechanics, but it is let down, unfortunately, by a little bit of unpredictability with bugs that are, in some cases, game-breaking. I feel really strongly the game would benefit from the additional modes and features that I've mentioned, which would extend the experience as well as the replayability. There are some clear bugs that are a bit of a problem, and the developer acknowledges need to be dealt with. Hopefully this will be dealt with soon, because those are the current biggest detractors from the game. It would appear on my playthrough that I got a bit unlucky with some of these bugs. I seem to get hit by quite a few of them. Others seem to have had a much, much better experience in this regards. But my situation wasn't an isolated example. As it stands, I have to judge the game based on what I played and how it is in its current state. So, based on that, I'm giving Beans the Coffee Shop Simulator 68% out of 100 on the CG scoring system. Fix the bugs. Maybe look at putting in a tycoon-esque mode, maybe that's not particularly overwhelming, so it appeals to more casual indie market. And I think this game can score much, much, much higher. This is definitely one of the better casual games I've played recently, and all in all, really worth it just for the storytelling alone. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants storytelling or just a more casual sim experience. Thanks for listening. I hope you've really, really enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!